to the session about creating a customer-first grid. We have just a fantastic panel up here today, and throughout the conversations that we've been having over the last 3 days, we've really focused on all of the potential impact of distributed energy resources, electric vehicles, renewables, and how that's going to impact the grid. But instead of what this panel, and I'll actually take the time to introduce our panelists right now. I have Katie Sloan, who's the Director of E-Mobility at Southern California Edison. Brian Eakin, who is a researcher and a strategist at Navigant. Kristen Brown, who is the principal that works with technology for the Exelon family of companies. And Matt Futch, the Global Business Development Director for NREL. Great panel. We're going to talk about how, instead of focusing on the technology, we create a customer-first grid, and then the technologies will really lead to that sort of natural innovation. And before we get started, I'm going to play a quick video about some of the really, really fantastic projects that NREL is doing around the country. So,
in her 1986 smash hit, Control, Janet Jackson sang about growing up, becoming more confident, and taking control. Control of her decisions, control of her career, and control of her energy choices. Okay, perhaps she didn't explicitly say that, but she may as well have. These days, people want more control over their daily lives, and most of the time, they depend on technology to get it. We certainly see this happening in energy. From EVs, transactive energy, and rooftop solar, to battery storage, smart homes, and smart cities. Our environment and technology are merging, and customers want to shape what that looks like. At NREL, we're working on testing and developing new grid edge technologies that give customers what they want, and that also happen to be technically feasible and financially viable for utilities. We've even got a whole facility on our campus dedicated to it. It's pretty cool work. Here are a few projects we're working on. Precise, with the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. In places like California and Hawaii, solar energy is booming. So much so that it's been hard keeping up with the demand. Interconnection applications exceed processing power. And with the tools currently available, there is no quick way to determine the impacts of new solar installations on the grid. Enter Pre-Configuring and Controlling Inverter Set Points, or Precise, because yes, there has to be an acronym. This tool, developed by NREL and the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, or SMUD, lets a utility precisely model a distribution feeder down to the meter based on a customer's address. And that shows them how to optimally configure the customer's smart solar inverter before it's shipped out and installed. Utilities are able to optimize equipment with a much shorter processing time, safely extending their hosting capacity. Meanwhile, customers get the clean energy they want more quickly and at a better value. Transactive energy with BlockCipher. So what's even better than adding all of the renewables you could possibly want to a system in an optimal way? Energy sharing. Through the lab's partnership with BlockCipher, NREL is exploring ways that neighbors can rely on one another to fulfill their energy needs. This project automates peer-to-peer energy sharing in real time and without a third-party arbitrator, meaning folks can get the energy they need at a competitive price without even thinking about it. And utilities can be compensated for maintaining the lines and equipment that makes this sharing possible. Trade you a cup of sugar for a couple of kilowatt hours? Grid optimized mobility with Eaton. Last but not least, let's look at mobility. As companies, cities, the military, and many others up their sustainability goals, fleet electrification becomes an enticing topic to explore. But it can be a delicate balance optimizing the value of the fleet along with generation and storage in a way that's not disruptive to the grid. To get some technically sound answers, NREL and Eaton are developing a platform to evaluate strategies for adding more electrified fleets to the grid. The platform can be used to identify the best ways to manage fleets in coordination with other distributed energy resources and the grid as a whole. This adds up to cost savings for the fleet owner and operational benefits for the utility. And the results of this research will uncover scalable insights into how new grid devices can work together and support one another. When customers can take control of their energy, and utilities can maintain or even improve the reliability and affordability of their grid, we think that's a perfect match. See what we're up to at www.nrel.gov/ESIF and at ESIF Labs. Get in touch to tell us about the grid edge challenges you're looking to solve.
Well, that's a great video and a great place to kick this off. So we touched on distributed energy resources, e-mobility, blockchain. Kristen, when I want to find out about blockchain, I
haven't had to talk about it yet. I don't like that you outed me.
Pretend you didn't hear what I just said. That's what my wife does, at least. But let's take the 20,000-foot view as opposed to starting out with an individual technology. How can utilities ensure that they're focusing on building a better energy system as a whole to serve our customers' needs, as opposed to simply delivering the latest and greatest and fun technology? And Katie, I'd love to turn it over to you to get started.
Sure, happy to do that. And I'll bring the utility perspective here. For us, when we look at the global view at Southern California Edison, when we look at our strategy, it's really around clean energy and how do we meet California's really aggressive GHG and air pollution goals. And so we put out a strategy about a year ago where we looked to see what would be the most cost-effective way to do that. And we found that we couldn't do it just by cleaning the electricity sector because we're only about 20% of the GHG emissions in California. So we realized that we're moving towards a clean energy future in California. Let's use that clean energy that's on the grid and going to be on the grid to electrify. And we really need to electrify the transportation sector because that's 40% of all GHG in California. So our strategy is to get to 80% clean energy by 2030, to get 7 million electric vehicles on the road in California by 2030, which I'm responsible for, and there's only about 500,000 today, so a lot of work that I'm sure we'll talk about, and then also electrifying buildings. And we see that this is something really great for Californians, not just because it's the cheapest way to get our greenhouse gas reductions, but also if we get more electric vehicles on the grid, we're better able to use the assets that we already have, and it can help bring down rates for everyone. So that's really the high-level strategy that we're looking at. And just to make it personal, because I like to tell a little story, make things personal, I see this in my day-to-day life. It's not just about that this is a strategy of California. This is about how Californians live. We just moved. We were living in downtown Los Angeles. We have the worst air pollution in the country. And I have a 2-year-old daughter. And I was very, very concerned about the asthma that she might develop if we stayed living in downtown Los Angeles. And that for me is the air pollution piece. We were able to move. We have the opportunity to move. A lot of people that live near freeways don't have that opportunity, but we moved into the foothills of the mountains. And I'm looking out there, we've had a lot of rain, and I'm seeing how green it is, and the only thing that's coming to my head is fires. And now I'm worried about fires, and that's the climate change piece. The fires are getting worse and worse in California. So this is really imperative that we make a change and we get there, and it's something that we can do, and it's not because it's easy, it's because it's hard, and we're gonna get there.
What a great clarion call to get us started right there, thinking both small about how it impacts your personal family, but then also how it impacts the state of California. Yeah. But Brian, expand it out for us. You're looking at this across the country and even beyond that. What are some of the things that you're seeing in terms of driving that customer-first grid?
Well, I would say one of the things that really provides a challenge to utilities in this area is, one, identifying what the customer's needs truly are, and thinking about whether you're talking about the average residential customer and what they want from the utility, or whether you're talking about a commercial customer or someone like McDonald's, for example, that has aggressive sustainability goals that they're trying to pursue. And there's a whole range of different solutions that the grid could adapt to or the utility could implement. And where I see the most success in this area, at least in addressing things that are customer first, is the utilities listening. So first of all, listening to the customers, listening to what they want from the utility, but also opening up a forum to listen to what what vendors or technology providers across the industry or globally are providing. And so what are the solutions they have, and vetting those out, and not specifically being very prescriptive and saying, well, we want a solution that fits in this box and this is exactly what we want as a utility, but providing a forum for people to pitch ideas to the utility and say, hey, I've got this great solution, it's cutting edge, it's new, we should pilot it, and it can provide this value to the utility and your customers and align with your goals. One example of that would be the RevConnect program in New York. That's an opportunity for people to collaborate, pitch new ideas, things that could bring down costs to consumers, provide more reliable energy service, but also test out and vet some of the more cutting edge solutions. And so I think that to me is really where it starts, with listening to the customers and then listening and collecting information for what's out there and what's possible and assessing those options.
Kristen, as you're listening to the customers in the Exelon family of companies, and I had the privilege of talking to your colleague, Calvin Butler, earlier, what are you hearing from ComEd to BGE and everywhere in between?
Yeah, so Exelon we're 10 million electric and gas customers, Baltimore Gas and Electric, you heard from Calvin today, ComEd in Chicago, PECO in Philadelphia, and then Pepco, which owns 3 utilities, Pepco, Delmarva, and Atlantic City. DC is their largest center. So we're really my role is to work across the fleet in order to help progress our energy future and our vision of that. I'll say there's 2 key aspects to how we're thinking about it. One is it's not just about building a better energy system, but it's understanding that energy underlies all of the transactions that most of us do in our daily lives. And because of that, we have a really heavy community focus. I actually missed Calvin's talk, so I don't know how much of this is duplicative. But we're really marching down this path towards connected communities. And what that means is playing an active role in supporting decarbonization in those communities, increasing quality of life for the citizens in those communities, and improving and investing in economic development. And in order to do that, we're really thinking about this transition to a platform business, which my former CEO at ComEd, Ann Pramajori, now CEO over the fleet, has really been driving for a while, and that's where customer centricity comes in. The biggest thing that we're doing, and I love this concept of listening, what do customers want from their utilities? For us, it's not necessarily what do they want from the utilities, it's what do they want from third parties, and how do we facilitate that? No longer how do we stand in the middle of that, but how do we create an environment in which I'm facilitating not only the transactions that happen between ComEd and Ryan, but say kind of Ryan and Katie, because there's value that you get from a community engagement, whether it's peer-to-peer or whether it's broader types of community sharing information through marketplaces. So we're starting to try and unpack a lot of what those dynamics are. And I think we're additionally taking a role in saying, we have a central place in this business that will remain, and that's the transmission and distribution of electrons. So how can we leverage that expertise to help progress third-party products and services? Because where our internal limitations exist, third parties can make up for that and provide that closer touch point to the customer. And it's really about building those partnerships as a platform and moving from kind of a B2C model, from a B2B2C model, to really ensure that customers are able to capture value from who they want to capture value from while maintaining reliability of the system.
That's a great point. And Matt, did you draw that cartoon there?
No, I did not.
That was not your fine work. Great video. Again, NREL has a national perspective on this. What are your thoughts, and what's NREL's perspective on how we can create that customer-first grid?
So, what I would say is it's surprising that NREL would be involved in a customer panel because we are a research lab. So let me try to address the question as to what is NREL doing on this panel about customers, right? So the reason why I want to put this video up is that's hard to articulate because we're research scientists and we're focused on things like synthetic inertia and a bunch of very highly technical stuff that's not customer friendly at all, and that they really don't care about, and really frankly they should not care about. So I think what we're seeing at the lab, which I think is relevant to all the issues we're talking about, is the scale and pace of technological change at the edge of the grid that we see in our lab every day, either advanced algorithms on the battery side or advanced material science or chemistries for transportation. That's happening at a much faster level than both the consumer and the regulators and the utilities and operators are really maybe even prepared for. And I think the role that we try to play with our partners is to make sure that the plumbing behind is actually going to be simple for the customer when the operators and the third-party developers actually are going to deploy and put this in the market, and people are going to have to pay and consume those products and services. So it's hard to articulate. That's why we put the animation and third grade stuff up there.
The third grade was perfect for my level. I'm going to strike the synthetic inertia question off of the list here, so we'll move that to the back. But I'm going to come right back to you. So whether it's solar PVs or electric vehicles or battery storage, all the things that you've been researching for years and years and years, how can utilities, how can the energy system as a whole do a better job determining which customers and how many customers will need a product or service?
So this might be a little controversial. I actually think that that's not the problem.
Okay.
So if you look at the data and the granularity that you can get from different customer segments, whether C&I or residential, it doesn't matter what the load is. We call them load, which is a bad word. That's not really where the issue is. If all those companies over there on the other panel that we were just talking to, Blue Pillar and those guys, we have the intelligence, we have the data to be able to parse those things out and develop those products and services. I actually think it's much more at this level about the economics of making sure that it's equitable across the classes of people that are trying to consume these products. To me, this is a core issue about what are we going to do to make the industry customer friendly. It's going to be what are we doing to make it equitable to address the issues that you're talking about across the customer classes. So it doesn't matter whether you have 50 different kinds of behind the meter Google Nest or whatever it is that we're developing or can do up here. Can people absorb and do this to help their families and maintain cost? And that sounds kind of conservative for a hippie lab like NREL, but that's really fundamental to our mission, is keeping things reliable and in a way that's simple and easy for people to understand and is cost effective. And really, I don't think it's about the data or the classification of the customer classes. I think it's, or even about the technology. It's much more about how do you make this stuff work and make it cheap and reliable.
With that idea of reliable and inexpensive so it can be afforded across the customer classes, so it's not just we're so excited to sell the coolest and greatest electric vehicle to our respective customers. Kristen, I'm going to add this little piece to...
I didn't know I had to pay attention.
You didn't know you had to pay... That's all right. I know you're going to give us a great answer as well, but the data piece, understanding your customer, whether it's the high-end customer, the medium customer, the C&I, whomever it is, is Exelon figuring out how many customers are going to adopt a program, which customers, and how that impacts your future grid and the load on that grid?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple layers there. So, and I'm going to try and remember all of them. But first and foremost, I think the point around the analytics existing to do that is very different than implementation of those analytics. And I was just on a data panel yesterday, and it was kind of Debbie Downer. I don't know how many of y'all saw it, but we're basically just talking about like how effing hard it is to actually do a lot of these things, part of my language, because its implementation is not only technical, it's cultural, and in some instances there's a regulatory barrier to being able to reach out specifically. The utility, former life was with U.S. Department of Energy, and the utility sort of plays a similar role to the government, in which you try and overcome a market failure and a market inequity, but you can't necessarily drive a customer to a specific product or solution, and you can't bet on winners because there's an equity issue and there's a competitive third market issue, especially in my territories. And so when we start talking about how we can do better at identifying customers and increasing adoption, there's a delicate balance we have to strike, I think, in ensuring that customers have choice in what they're adopting and that we're not picking the winners for them. But there are two things that we're doing now. One, we have a fairly robust, and I say robust because modeling and prediction is never really robust, but we do a lot of work in thinking about what DER acceleration and penetration levels will be in our service territories, not necessarily to say this is what it will be, but to say in the instance that it reaches this penetration, how do we need to think about the impact to customer bills? How do we need to think about investment? And then I think more importantly, given the uncertainty in those adoption pathways, how do we build out the critical fundamental basic infrastructure in order to adapt as needed given the uncertainty if we go down a high penetration or low penetration path. Additionally, and I'm sure every utility is doing this, we've been really into developing customer journeys. So we did a very robust customer journey for our solar program to help understand, for us, a new e-commerce kind of mission and e-commerce functionality. We're doing that across the board. Next will be storage, and then we'll do EVs as well, to really think about what is a customer doing, what is their pain point, especially as it relates to their interaction with the utility, and then how can we overcome that from, I think, more of a marketing, more of a consumer engagement perspective.
Brian, and I know you're going to want to jump in. I know you're ready.
So many points.
So like, you've got to let us go after each other.
Good gender balance. I'm messing it up right here, but Brian, Kristen said something I think that is probably pretty accurate, but that every utility is really looking at that customer journey. Talk to us a little bit in the context of this question, how we make sure that we're doing a good job identifying how many customers with that holistic perspective of the customer journey.
Yeah, so this is a question that's not new. It's not something that utilities have just started to ask. I can flash back to a prior life a decade ago at Oklahoma Gas and Electric, and I was responsible for load forecasting and customer strategy and other things like that. And that was a key question at the time. Well, who's going to get a solar panel? And this was sort of early days when we were starting to see that sort of adoption. And so there's a long history of utilities asking that question. Now on the consulting side, I continually get utilities asking this exact question. I've worked with a few utilities to try to address that, to do modeling to figure out how many customers are going to adopt an EV, when are they going to adopt it, where are they going to be located. And a lot of this ties into advanced distribution planning, so try to be smarter about where you're putting one transformer versus another, what your plans are in the next 5 years, 10 years out. I do want to kind of draw a fine line between identifying exactly which customer is going to do something and which feeder, which substation is going to be impacted by different technologies. That's something that I've seen from some utilities getting very caught up on. I want to know, Jim Smith living at this exact house, tell me exactly when he's going to get solar on his roof. So that way I can be there the day before upgrading his substation. That's the kind of mindset that I see people coming at this, like, hey, there's so much data. The utilities have a lot of history about consumption patterns. They've got psychographic metrics. They've got financial data. There's a ton of information. They're uniquely positioned to make that assessment of who can potentially benefit from these things, who's going to be interested in making that decision to adopt. But there's a big difference between who's likely to do something and exactly when are they going to get the message from someone to, sell it to them, sell them an EV, sell them a battery for their house, sell them solar panels, those sorts of things. And so I think this is something that can be addressed at a more aggregate geographic level. So figuring out which substations you should start planning around, but not exactly getting down to the individual customer level unless the utility is actually going to step in the near term and get involved in engaging customers and actually marketing programs to them directly. That's something that's different. That's a near-term thing. But when you're talking about technologies, especially when you're talking about batteries, things like that that are out on the horizon, thinking about who exactly is going to do that today, that's kind of a shot in the dark. There's very probabilistic approaches to that. But for the most part, you can see in aggregate who could potentially benefit from that. And I think that's where utilities have the most to gain, but it also manages the uncertainty around that.
So Katie, then you don't know the next 6,500,000 customers in order that are going to adopt an EV in Southern California Edison's territory?
Not all of them, but I'd like to kind of split this into how we're thinking about passenger vehicles and then more medium and heavy duty vehicles, because they're a little bit different. On the passenger vehicle side, It's fine to know at the aggregate level, especially for distribution planning. If you're just plugging in at your house, it's like plugging in a hairdryer, quite honestly. So that's not a big deal. We have a good sense of where the level 2 chargers are coming in. We have customer programs to support that. It's more about the marketing and targeted marketing. We want people to move when they're thinking about getting a vehicle. We want to know who those intended vehicle purchases are so that we can market to them, let them know the benefits of electric vehicles. We're working through who's the best person to be delivering that message, but we really need to be proactively supporting that to meet the goals that we need to achieve. It's different on the medium and heavy duty side. I'm kind of seeing the silent electric bus coming to run us over because on the distribution side, we're talking about large amounts of load. So in California, we have a rule called the Innovative Clean Transit Rule that was passed at the end of last year, that all new buses that are purchased by 2029 in California have to be clean. So it's essentially electric or fuel cell. So we have, like LA Metro has 2,000 buses. They'll have a depot where they have 100 buses, and they're putting in tens of megawatts of power in a very congested area. The answer can't be, oh, we have to put in a substation, and that's going to be 7 years from now. So that's where we really need to know, where is the load coming, where will it be? So this is why we're at conferences like this. We go to a lot of customer-facing conferences. Next week, we're speaking at an expo where there's a lot of fleet managers to say, talk to your utility early and often. We're also talking to the automakers to say, where are you getting your purchases coming? They're a little bit cagey on that for reasons, but we need to know where that's going to be coming so that we can be prepared. And I really like a couple of the other themes that we've been talking about around simplicity and implementation. I think for us, dreaming up new programs and even getting them approved by our regulator is something that we're pretty good at. But making it simple for the customer and having those customer journeys that aren't just EV specific, but everything that we're talking to the customer about, how do we have a consolidated message that's easy and simple for them? Because like we said, they don't want to think about it. We want to think about, when are your EVs charging? Are they going to be in the middle of the day when we have a lot of solar on our grid and we need to use that solar, but we want to have an automated interface so that they're just plugging in their car and it's either happening at the charging station or happening on the vehicle, and it's happening automatically, and they're saving money. Like that's the vision that we want to get to.
It's a great vision. Did you want to jump in here, Matt?
Yeah, I just have one comment, which is the importance of imagination. This is kind of a strange thing to say. So let me tell you two stories. We have two partners. I won't mention who they are, but you'll probably guess if I give enough clues. One of them is in a very hot desert area, and there was some political contention.
Vermont? Is it Vermont?
Yeah, it's Vermont.
Green Mountain Power.
A lot of political contention around the rollout of batteries, okay, in-home batteries. And so we said, well, why don't we deploy all these and put us in the lab and do some testing, blah, 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 and make sure that you actually can envision a future in which there's 10 to 15 times the amount of deployed in-home devices on the battery, various vendors, various levels of capacity. Imagine that now, and then what is it, the actual algorithms and products you need to develop in the signaling between the devices, and make all that clean and easy for the customer. Right now, not 5 years when, oh shit, actually there's 500 of these that are coming interconnection requests every week. We don't want to go through this PV experience that we had, 10 years ago where we didn't anticipate. So I think imagining a future that's much faster than what you may anticipate, even if it doesn't happen, being prepared for that, I think is something that we've seen a lot of. So that's very customer friendly. The other is another one down in the south, not desert, which is about cyber. And so imagine a future in which not paranoia is not necessarily the thing you want to do, but allowing a different kind of engagement between the networks and the people, such that you're allowing things in to be more secure, having a tight box around that. We're doing a lot of work in that space, and that's a weird area, cyber, to talk about customers, but it's incredibly important that we focus on a different approach to security in our networks. So we do a lot of work in that space too, and I think that's important.
Well, that's a great jumping off point, and it strikes me that, as we are trying to predict the future load and building the system that is capable of it, whatever that flexible pathway to get there, the grid is going to be modern, more effective, better, and more responsive, regardless of whether we have 3 million EVs or 10 million distributed energy resources on a particular load or not. So that's a grand vision, but there's some real challenges and barriers to this. Brian, I'm going to come to you. What are some of those key challenges and barriers that you're seeing?
So I would say one of the kind of barriers to start with is that it typically hasn't been in the DNA of utilities to have to go out and proactively engage all their customers. Running a monopoly for the most part, sending electrons one way down a wire, there hasn't been a significant need for utilities to engage customers in that way. One of the other things that I think I heard one of the other panels people reference is that the average customer isn't here at this conference. It isn't in the room. It's not walking into the boardroom at the utility. It's probably never set foot in the boardroom at a utility, and projecting kind of what we think customers want onto what they actually want. And then the definition of kind of, is average really what you should plan around, and are they how you should be engaging versus thinking about different segments of customers and what what you should do to reach out to them. One experience I've had where we found like a really good way to engage customers is around having an effective story to tell. So back when I worked at OG&E, we were running a smart grid program. We're trying to get customers to enroll in a variable peak pricing program. And so just imagine trying to sell people in Oklahoma, the quote average customer, on getting into an electric rate that's variable every day. And to do that, we came up with a very effective story to tell. Not going to build power plants that burn fossil fuels for at least a decade. We're going to save money by doing that, and those savings are going to get passed on to customers. So you're going to get to save, and we're going to give you enabling technology. And so we had this really compelling story to tell. And that's something that I feel like a lot of utilities sort of skip over that. It's like, hey, here's this shiny object. Well, let's go put a bunch of EV chargers out here and test that out. Or, hey, let's put this new rate out here. Let's test a rate. And I engage with utilities around trying to assess and evaluate and kind of plan those pilots. And one of the questions that I have a hard time getting an answer from a lot of utilities is around, why are you doing this? Like, well, the regulators told us. Or what are you going to tell the customer that calls you and says, why should I be doing this? And the answer is around like, well, we want to learn about a rate. We want to learn about the technology. That's not a compelling call to action for a customer. It doesn't really instill confidence that the utility is doing something in their best interest. And so I think that's kind of the first step that utilities should take is customers are going to ask questions. They want to make sure that what you're doing is in the best interest of them, giving them cheaper power, more reliable service, those sorts of things, putting it in terms that they understand. And I think that's really the first step in effectively engaging customers is knowing what story to tell and how you're going to tell it to them.
Katie, is that your experience at SCE?
Yeah, I think one of the things that this is reminding me of is as we've been on our journey for electrification of vehicles, we found a lot of new partners that we didn't have before. So we have a lot of partners in the environmental justice community. So we've been partnering a lot with people that are communities that represent people that living on our freeways. So the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach bring in 50% of all the goods into the country, and then they go into our inland empire. And we have a lot of disadvantaged communities that are along those trucking lines. And the people that are day-to-day having those impacts, they go out and they advocate, not just to our regulators, but to our customers about what these programs are and how it changes their lives. From the regulatory perspective, it's been really exciting that when we have a program that our commission has cut down, we don't have to argue to get more funding for it. We have other people that actually argue for it. Originally, we had a heavy-duty and medium-duty infrastructure program that our commission said, okay, you're going to get as much money Southern California as Pacific Gas and Electric in Northern California will get. And the environmental justice people and also the environmental people went in and they said, the air quality is way worse in Southern California. This is an air quality program. You have to give Southern California Edison additional funds. And bringing those kinds of stories to our customers and really having a clear, concise strategy of what we're trying to achieve, cleaning the grid, electrifying vehicles, electrifying buildings, it makes it so much easier to have those conversations and to get people on board and to make them interested in adopting. I think just one other thing to key off of barriers that we see specifically in electric vehicles, we still have range anxiety. That's still a big issue. People are still worried about, will they be able to get to work, get to the places they want to go. And I think that's a lot of education and communication People ask me all the time, well, should I wait until there's a lot of fast chargers so that I can charge like at a gas station until I adopt an electric vehicle? And I say no. If you had a situation today where you could just fuel up at your home or at your work, and someone told you that you had to go out of your way and go to a place that smelled really bad and fuel up your car, why would you want to move to that model? You should have the model where you're just in the places where you are today. But that mind shift hasn't happened, and we also, I would say, haven't done quite a great job in making those communications to customers and making it real life for them.
Matt, did you want to
No,
jump in
I was
there?
actually going to see maybe if anybody has some questions. Maybe get these
I definitely going to open it up to the audience here. But actually, as we're talking about that mind shift, Kristen, how is Exelon trying to help shift minds of customers to overcome some of these challenges and these barriers to that we're seeing when it comes to modernizing the grid?
Yeah, so I think there's two things. One is shifting the mind of the consumers through outreach, through education, through well-designed programs. The comment around time of use rates, real-time pricing, demand response, those programs tend to be very undersubscribed because people don't understand them. And so we try and do a lot in order to reach out to our consumers. I would say the bigger issues are getting over the internal barriers. Right now, customer segmentation can kind of be a dirty phrase depending on where in the business you sit. Because I think there's an obvious understanding that people are different and that people respond to different things, but as a business that is there to create equity, there's still a little bit of a fear about not treating everyone as equal, but meeting people where they are today doesn't mean reduced equality, it just means building that story in an intentional way. And I think we're still doing a lot as a business to understand how we maintain an equitable program design, but also can meet these, I think, shrinking customer segment sizes. I think additionally, we've made some pretty big mistakes in reaching out to consumers, especially around technology programs that we're learning from. So one of our utilities, when they were launching their microgrid, went to a community and said, we have all this new cool tech, it's gonna be awesome, like you're gonna be super into it. And this is a historic area of one of the neighborhoods. There's economic development issues there are jobs issues, there's a fear of gentrification to maintain the historic relevance of that area. And they basically said, absolutely not, why does any of this matter to us? And we had sent our engineers in to do that. It was a pretty big, yeah. And
Like engineers.
and I think there's communications challenges because we're excited about new tech. Yeah. We're a siloed business, and in some instances, we're a pretty people have their little kingdoms, and I think they want to own that end-to-end story. And so, to a large extent, as a business, we've had to learn how to break that down and how to start the conversation with the customer problem, not the cool utility tech solution, because we've seen it, pretty significantly backfire.
Matt, Brian, I'm sorry, you wanted to just jump in
Actually,
here.
that brought up a really interesting thought. So breaking down some of the silos within the utility to be able to deliver new products and solutions. That was actually the story of the Smart Grid program at Oklahoma Gas and Electric. When I was there, when they got the Smart Grid investment grant to deliver and test all these technologies, they didn't do it within the utility itself. They actually went over a block away from the headquarters for the utility, opened up essentially a shadow utility, hired all new people, all areas of the utility to create an entirely new org structure, brought in people that had an entirely different background, that had more tech and startup backgrounds, that were used to working in more responsive and in shorter timelines to deliver those solutions. And so I think, and that was something that was absolutely necessary to, at the time, put in more advanced technologies in a reasonable timeline and be responsive to what customers needed. And so I think the point about the utility itself, how business as usual is done, is going to have to change to be responsive and be adaptive to those new technologies. I think that's a huge point about that.
That's a great,
Yeah,
Matt,
I was
please.
going to add just to kind of bandwagon on that. The SMUD project that we were talking about up there, some of this is not rocket science, right? It's like, let's ask them what it is that the problem is. So what I liked about this project with SMUD was that they went out And they said, okay, we realize that we're not interconnecting these PV systems at the speed and the rate that you want. What's the problem? So they asked they did not a survey, like, they actually went and talked to them. And then they went and talked to the vendors, which is where the core of the problem was. And then we went and talked to them, and they said, well, how do we fix this issue? So this whole pre-configuring inverters, oh God, that's an engineering issue. But what it did was it accelerated the ability to deliver this problem that the customers had, what they wanted. We want it fast. We wanted to be able to set this thing, and we want you to deliver this system in 3 days. And everybody else wants it in 3 days. Oh, well, how do we fix that? Well, it was an engineering problem. It was. But they went and asked their customers. So some of it is not, I think, really, somebody's actually just engaging in just customer service. So sometimes it is simplicity and not engineering problem.
We've got about 5 minutes left. Are there any questions from the audience? Like,
I'm really interested in the precise program. I mean, I assume that was all residential. What were they configuring the inverters for? And then I guess also for the utility folks, for like C&I customers, what can we do to accelerate interconnection timelines and help to actually build grid infrastructure in advance so that maybe it's not all put on one customer for the cost and they're not waiting 2 years for this UV closer or whatever.
Yeah, so go ahead. I think California and Exelon will have probably some feeling about this.
That's my new nickname.
And then I can try to answer the issue about the project, yeah.
I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we've done with our electric vehicle interconnections, because we have, in addition to installing 1,000 of our own charging ports through our programs, we've installed 300 different sites with like Tesla superchargers, NRG, ChargePoint. And what we found is that originally we have districts in our service area. It's going to get really utility speak, like 13 different districts. And we found out that if there's an Electrify America that's putting in charging stations across our service area, they were dealing with different planners across the service area and different processes across the service area. And it was really clunky and it was really confusing and it wasn't as fast as it could be. So again, to the simplicity piece, we centralized that. So we have now one dedicated team that Electrify America has one project manager that then works with the districts, and we have one process, super simple, which is design, construct, energize, and that makes it sound a lot easier than it is, but those are the steps, and it makes it easy to communicate to the customers about, and we've gotten our time down to about 6 months, which is pretty good with like permitting and construction. So that's one way that we've attacked that, but I think being proactive, seeing what's coming, and making it, learning from the solar lessons learned that we have, not banging our head against the wall again, is something that we're looking to do.
Yeah, I was going to say on the inverter project specifically, the issue was that all the inverter manufacturers had different settings, pre-baked into the software and power electronics. They weren't standardized in a way that was relevant to the different sizing of the systems and the different people buying different systems. So SMUD had also a lot of complexity in their back enterprise systems, which was the issue about data you were talking about. So we wanted to figure out a way to have it standardized with the inverter so that when the interconnection request came from the customer, it was already pre-baked into 3 different standardized ways of getting in the inverter, so that we knew that if it was a 15 kilowatt system, then it would be like this. If it was a 3 kilowatt system, it would be like this. And all the inverter, no matter who the inverters were that came in and were part of the program, that was already something that they would accede to, not because there was a regulation or because there was some commission order that said they had to do it, but because it was ultimately better for, for SMUD to be able to deliver the product and for the customers to get what they wanted. So there did not have to be a municipal, or SMUD is a municipality, but that's what I like about that story, was that it wasn't driven by a regulatory or decree. It was driven by a customer demand, and we all kind of came together with it. Oh, obviously, well, let's just standardize this process. It actually was not simple. It was actually a little bit hard to get all the inverter manufacturers to go along with it. It was hard to get SMUD and everybody to go along with the enterprise back-end costly system changes that were required. It wasn't cheap to get all those systems to kind of talk to each other. But the system that NREL and the researchers put together is now being incorporated into there, and they're just going to take it off of us. We relicense it get out of the lab. It doesn't need to be in the lab anymore. So,
As we put a bow on this, and it's pretty tough to put a bow on all of this, and because there's so many components to it, one word that I heard multiple times around the table today was story. How do we tell our customers, the consumers of the product, a better story about what's coming in the future? And Kristen, would you start us off with that better story? Would you tell us what the Exelon story is?
Yeah, so the Exelon story is really about connectivity and community engagement. I will say, though, there's a story that the customers are told and the residential individual consumers are told. I think in some places that's us who tells that. I think largely it's the third-party services. I think Tesla tells that story. I think Nest tells that story. Sunrun tells that story. And I think we have to enable that story to be told by those vendors and not step in the middle of it. But then for us, there's a story that we're telling our municipalities as well. And that's that method around partnership, around engagement, around the story that we tell bus installers and fleet managers around engagement. And so I think there's a shift towards let's work together, let's build this community, and let's figure out the right ways to partner to get there. That's, I think, honestly pretty new for us to do and engage in that way, but it's something that we've made an enterprise commitment towards.
Brian, anything to quickly add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the key point to telling a good story is being able to quickly articulate a vision for what the future is going to be. And so that way customers know where the utility is heading with it, and it's not just a bunch of piecemeal, one technology here, one thing there, a new rate, new program, things that may not really cohesively make sense to the customer, but having a common thread of saying, we have this objective in mind, this is our vision for what your experience as a customer is going to be, and their role in the community is going to be as well. And so quickly tying things back to that, you can talk about any technology if you can tie it back to a single kind of cohesive story.
Thanks, Brian. Katie, anything to, what's the SCE story? What's the California story?
The SCE story is definitely around our clean energy pathway and electrification, and really getting to 80% clean energy by 2030, the 7 million electric vehicles, a third of the buildings being energized, and it's through enabling customer choice. And the vision that I have for my team that's focused on e-mobility is enabling that customer choice to get to a vision of blue skies and silent highways. And that's the kind of pictorial vision that we have for the future.
And we kind of started with the NREL story at the beginning with your wonderful animation, but Matt, finish us off here. What is the story and the future of where energy is going?
Okay, so let me try to be not controversial again. It's hard. I had an old boss who was over there, and he was really controversial 30 seconds ago. I think the story is co-opetition. And what I mean by that is no single, although I'm a strong believer in scale and the need for an operator to maintain the system the way it should be to be able to deliver what we can't have the plane crash, right? Absolutely cannot have this happen. But I do think that the configuration of partnerships between operators and third parties, between third parties and the consumer, that is the story of the future of the industry. It's not about the technology. That's a big change. I think that's the future of the industry.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing a really, I think, positive, uplifting, and forward-looking vision for what's to come. Thank you all for listening in.